Okay, so what I've got for you are a few slides, and I may go through all of them, I may not. And what I'd really like is to just kind of talk through them fairly quickly and then leave you time to ask questions. So I'm going to take maybe 10, 15 minutes to kind of walk through some of those slides, and then we'll put the floor to you guys. All right. So some of you may be familiar with this training. I understand you all are focusing around carrying capacity and whatnot with this conservation lands workshop today. And that's a component of this. Let me just kind of, and what I thought I'd do is just give you a quick little introduction to kind of what this training course is about, and maybe it would appeal to some of you. And as the slide says, Miranda is going to be hosting it in December. So that's kind of exciting. So I'm very glad to be able to talk about something that's actually going to be in your neighborhood very soon. And this, along with all of the courses from the Coastal Services Center, can be hosted by you all there. You don't have to travel here to do it. And here, by the way, is Charleston, South Carolina. That's where I'm sitting, joining you all today. So thank you for being there. So this course has got a number of objectives, and we're only going to touch on a second one today, and we're not even going to necessarily become familiar with it. I'm simply going to introduce you to it. As you all are probably aware of, there's a lot of people doing a lot of fun stuff out there in our coastal environments, and that creates some impact. And that creates a conundrum for managers, and also not just managers of protected areas, but managers of cities, people who live in areas like you all, who have a high tourist input during certain times of the year. Those are visitors too, right? So you've got to figure out how to balance what they're there to enjoy with taking care of what's there to enjoy, right? So it's a balancing act. And this can be difficult. Oftentimes cities or protected area managers do, 5-year management plans or something, but what happens if somebody suddenly starts kiteboarding in your protected area and you didn't include that in your management plan? Now what? Well, this process that I'm going to introduce you to can be used for just a one-off kind of new use like that, or it can be kind of collected together and built into a management plan, and it's based on all of these great recreational theories that we have out there. So let me move on. And this is that decision-making process. So this is kind of like problem-solving any problem, right? Well, what's the problem? Are we aware of the problem? What specifically is the problem? What can we do about it? And how do we know whether or not what we're doing about it is actually effective? So this whole decision-making process, it starts with really thinking about what are the local issues. And the great thing about this training that we do is that we work with our local host, like Moran, to bring in local speakers about local visitor use issues. So it's not just me and my co-trainer talking theoretically about stuff that may or may not apply to you in terms of, or that you may or may not relate to in terms of particular issues. You all provide us issues, and we talk about those, as well as having local speakers discuss what they're doing and what they're tangling with. The great thing that I like about this decision-making process is it feels really intuitive, and there are worksheets to kind of guide you through the process. So it's not like you have to come up with this stuff out of thin air and hope that you remember it. You've got documentation. And that's one thing that this whole process does, is it allows you to provide a documented thought process, essentially, to the decisions that you're making, so that you can, they're defensible decisions this way. So what is the problem? What's the awareness? What level of impact is there? And is that level acceptable or unacceptable? Excuse me just a minute. Let me turn so I can see the clock. And then the problem specification, really digging into the root cause of what that problem is. And what I mean by root cause is what the real issue is. So like thinking about dogs on the beach, that's not really a problem. Dogs pooping on the beach and the poop not being disposed of might be a problem. Well, what's the real problem? Like, why is that problem happening? Well, a root cause might be that visitors are unaware of the impact of poop on the beach. They might be unaware of how to dispose of it. There could be many things that are really the real reason, and then that leads you to, okay, now that we've identified that root cause, how are we going to know? Like, what kinds of indicators are there to help us understand that change is happening in that issue? And moving on through, we're going to come back to this slide. So let me just kind of bring you into some of the introductory stuff, and then we'll dive back into this real quick. So as you all know, coasts are changing. We've got lots of people living in coastal areas, really enjoying those areas. This data, this 52%, is about a year and a half old or so. That means half the population of the U.S. lives in these coastal watersheds, so places that drain to coastlines. And then of that 52%, nearly 40% of them live in actual counties that abut the shoreline. That's a lot of people in a narrow sort of area. And then we've got visitors to those areas, right? So all kinds of impact. Now, this whole training is based around a few themes, sort of what's the human piece to it? So people love coastal places. There's great science out there that's telling us that, you know, being around water improves our well-being and improves our physical well-being in many ways. It's great research. It's really cool to see. There are all kinds of uses. There are various activities that people do in coastal areas that they really enjoy: kiteboarding and windsurfing and surfing and kayaking and bird watching and beach walking, all of these things. And then what they're there for. You know, is it for recreation? Is it for exercise? Is it for just that sense of well-being? Is it to get together with people, a social aspect to it? And all of those uses have different types of impacts. They could be an impact to the resource, or they could be an impact to other visitor experiences. Like, for instance, if I'm paddling along a kayak trail, am I out there for solitude? And is that kayak trail really well visited? Am I paddling along with 100 other people and I'm trying to get a little solitude? Maybe that's an impact on my visitor experience. So it's not just the impact to the resources, but the impact to visitor experience as well. And then kind of overall thinking about, okay, so given all of this, what do you do about it? How do you move forward with planning and management of those issues? Again, preserving the reason that people enjoy being in a place with the fact that people are enjoying being in a place, right? So lots of these human dimensions. These are all probably very familiar to you all. There are all kinds of things that happen in coastlines or in recreational situations that we need to manage for, you know, whether we're a part of a municipality or actually management of a protected area, all kinds of different things. I'm sure you all could add a number of things to this list. So, and because of those things, there are all kinds of different impacts. Maybe it's campsite creep. Maybe it's breaking off of hunks of coral for souvenirs, or anchor blowouts when the anchor pulls up seagrass beds. Maybe it's point source pollution or non-point source pollution, just general runoff, or maybe there's an actual small pipe or some sort of source of pollution going into these areas. What does that mean for managers of these places? And the point is that none of us involved in natural resources management are under the illusion that we're actually managing the natural resources, right? We're managing the people who consider them resources. So that's the key, is thinking about what's the piece that matters to the people and how can we help them make good choices. So there's problem solving, and then there's also the part where the outreach and stewardship and education come in, some behavior change, that responsibility and ownership increase. And if we wait for this kind of sense of stewardship and this stewardship ethic to magically evolve in our visitor populations, we'll be waiting a long time. We actually need to encourage that happening. We need to encourage good behavior and discourage bad behavior. And you know, those are subjective terms, but of course what I mean is as related to the impact on the resource that we're taking care of. And continuing again to make sure that visitors have a positive experience in these areas so they keep coming back. I know that sort of seems like a paradox, but that's what we're working with. So then again, kind of thinking about that whole overview, then we come into this planning and management, and this visitor use decision-making process that I was showing you, and that I'll show you again in a minute, didn't come out of thin air. And this is just a note from just a concept. We really want to plan stuff. We don't want to just we want to be in a position to be proactive, and that's what this process does for us. We don't want to be reactive, because then it's kind of too late. We want to be on that up the first end of the tail, not the end of the curve. So again, this process came out of, there are all sorts of great recreational management approaches out there that are tried and true, and these are great for building a whole management process. But what happens if you have one-off something, or if you just need to include another piece in it? Well, this process can help, and the process is sort of a synthesis, a distillation of the key pieces of all of these really solid recreation management frameworks. And these are probably familiar to many of you. This one in the, I guess it's your lower right-hand corner with sort of the green on the left-hand side, the maintaining the quality of park resources and visitor experiences. The authors of that worked with us to create this training, and to put a coastal and marine lens over that terrestrial handbook, so that we draw strongly from that handbook, and that was a product of the University of Minnesota Extension. And again, a part of all of these recreation management frameworks is carrying capacity, and I know that you all have been talking about that. Here's sort of the traditional definition of carrying capacity, and then these days we're also concerned about other levels, or not really levels, but other components of carrying capacity. It's not just about the number of animals that we can graze on an area. That's less what we're talking about with recreation. We're talking about, okay, what kind of use, how many people, without, what's the balance? At what point do we get to degrading social conditions? At what great point do we get to degrading environmental conditions? How do we plan for avoiding those thresholds and identifying them and managing so that we don't reach them? How are we doing? Just see thumbs up out there? You okay? All right, very good. Okay, moving on. So back to this decision-making process. So that is sort of the background of this and the foundation of this. And I kind of walked you through a little bit of these pieces. Again, I'm going to dive in here. This is not without limitations, great? Any approach, we need to consider the good with the bad, right? So the great thing about this approach is that it is systematic. I mean, it is looking at the whole. It's not looking at little pieces and how they work individually. It's looking at the whole. And again, that thing about the root causes, what is really the issue, and how do we approach it so that we can really address the issue? How do we identify indicators that actually tell us something about the issue and the progress? What kind of management strategies and tactics could we employ that actually will address the issue, not just sort of putting the Band-Aid over the gaping wound? We're talking about really addressing something beyond the symptoms, really the root cause. And then this range of management tactics and strategies appropriate for that. And then again, I think that I really like this because it just documents it, and that allows us to document what we're doing now, implement it, and then continue to monitor so that we can incorporate the learning in the adaptive management format and move forward and understand if we're moving in the right direction, make adjustments as need be, informed adjustments, not just wild guess adjustments, right? And then the decision making is defensible that way. It's not just because we kind of felt like it, it's because this is a thoughtful process and it was informed by these people with their levels of expertise and experience in addition to these various sources of information. And then of course the limitation, it does assume that there is some familiarity on the manager's part of what's going on, which if anybody in a planning, in a county planning office, in a municipality, or managing a protected area who doesn't have an idea of what kind of levels of impact there are. And there's a lot of information to gather. And of course, anytime we're trying to, create that balance between people's use of something and the protection of something, we are taking time to do that. So, however, I'll have to tell you that this distillation of all of these various recreation management approaches really helps shortcut and streamline it, rather than going through the whole limits of acceptable change or the visitor experience and resource protection approaches that are very time intensive. So this really helps you streamline so you can address issue by issue or a host of issues. Incidentally, it doesn't have to be, it could be something you can retrofit it to in the adaptive management kind of realm of improving something that you've been doing. You can be anticipatory and trying to get ahead of any potential new uses. So it doesn't have to be, well ahead of the game. It can be really used in many different ways. All right, so worksheet 1. This is about that second column, the specification of the problem. And this is just a worksheet to kind of help you think through the pieces of that specification of the problem. In the course, we talk about what does it really mean to state the problem? What's a good problem statement? How do you really describe the root cause? What goes into writing a good indicator? What makes it a smart indicator? What kind of information sources would you draw on to be able to understand what indicators would be appropriate to use as measures of impact? How do you understand what the current level is? How do you know about that existing impact? All of these things can be documented right here, and this is great to use with a planning team or a management team. So coming back out of that, so that was our second column here. And then moving into, so great, you've got the problem specified. You've got ways to understand sort of how the problem might be changing by having selected great indicators. Now moving into the management strategy tactics selection, this is our worksheet 2. And this worksheet has a whole host of questions such as these two that you see before you on the first side of the page. So it kind of helps you gauge the feasibility of employing that particular approach or tactic. And then it gives you an effort impact grid on the back to kind of take that that tactic that you've selected and kind of give it a grade. Is it a high impact and low effort? Then let's go forward with that one. Is it a really low impact but super high effort? That doesn't mean it's off the table, but that means that it needs to be given further consideration and balanced with the other approaches. Moving on from worksheet 2, so and now that you've got the problem specified, you've got some management strategy and tactics, now it's time to implement. And this is where we want to keep it from sitting on the shelf and getting dusty, right? We want to work through this worksheet 3 to understand who's going to do what by when, using what resources to what extent. Are there any additional notes or considerations with that? Really kind of thinking through that with your planning team. And then, of course, the monitoring is key. So how do you know that you're making the progress? Well, you've got to be collecting those indicators, understanding the changes, and letting that continue to inform each step by looking back at it. And you'll see that the problem awareness column, those 2 bullets, are the exact same bullets as are under the monitoring column, because one feeds into the other. It's an iterative process. So with that, I think I've left just a couple of minutes for questions. Are there any? Thank you all for being so patient and listening.
Thank you. And I just want to reiterate that, that Pam this is a 20-minute tease to a 2-day workshop that she's offering on our behalf in December, and I'll email everybody who's registered with the details. And NOAA Coastal Services Center and people like Pam have been absolutely wonderful. I just did a count, and since 2002, they've guided 31 days of training for us. This is the first time we've offered this workshop in the Charlotte Harbor National Estuary Program area. And usually we charge a nominal registration fee. And this time, thanks to the Jelks Family Foundation, we'll be able to waive registration fees for a few people. So
nice.
Thank you, Pam.
It's very generous. Any questions? Or shall I sign off? If there are any questions, you can reach me. I think that the contact information might be in your workshop booklet, and if not, you can contact me through Moran. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope that you feel like today has been a day well spent. It looked like a great program. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pam.